Okay. If everyone would have a seat, please. Thank you very much. Oops. So we have everybody who's going to be here. Who is? Right. Jen. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Massey? Councilmember Bolin?
Here.
Councilmember Mwambwe?
Here.
Councilmember Emig?
Present.
Councilmember Painter? Here. Councilmember Black? Here. Councilmember Craybill?
Here.
Councilmember Bray?
Okay. And at this point, we do have Council Member Carrillo who would like to participate virtually. She is ill. Is there a motion to allow her to participate virtually?
So moved.
Moved by Council Member Craybill, second by Council Member Bolin. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Bolin?
Aye. Yes.
Councilmember Mwambwe?
Yes.
Councilmember Emig?
Yes.
Councilmember Painter?
Yes.
Councilmember Black? Yes. Councilmember Craybill?
Yes. Okay. Jan, are you there?
I am. Thank you for letting me join.
Yeah, you're legit. I hope you're doing okay.
I am. I don't feel terrible, but I just didn't want to risk taking down the entire Bloomington government system just in case it's more than a cold.
Well, we actually do appreciate that, and I think there are about 80,000 residents who appreciate that as well. Thank you so much. At this point, we're going to move directly. We don't have any recognitions and appointments, but we do have public comment. And again, if you want to get direct answers to questions or to engage in dialogue or whatever, I have a mayor's open house, equivalent of a town hall meeting, right around the fishbowl over there. Sometimes it spills over if there are more people, every 2 weeks. And so you can just come and talk about anything you want, and you can get direct answers and have interaction. In public comment, however, what we have is it's really a one-way conversation. It's an opportunity for you to speak out, and up to 3 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and read these. We have Bill Rao, and Scott Steinley, and Serena Fish in that order. So we'll start with Bill.
Mayor Renner, Mr. Gleason, council members. In November, the Bloomington Normal Climate Action Campaign provided commentary on the imperative need for an extreme weather response plan. In January, we made a formal presentation to the Council for the Town of Normal on the same plan, and Normal has pledged to work with us to try and put such a plan into effect. So I have basically two requests. The first request is that you work with Normal so that we can put that plan into effect as soon as possible, ideally essential parts of it by this summer. The second request is set aside a small sum of money to implement parts of that plan. This is not an expensive plan, but there are some costs. The primary one would be a contingency fund to allow the basically extra staffing of emergency cooling centers should a major heat wave fall on a weekend. And heat waves don't keep business hours, so that's a distinct probability. There would also be some minor equipment charges, but the cost of this would be fairly small. So basically you have an issue here to work with Normal, to set up a system that could help save lives, or you could throw dice with Mother Nature. Those are basically the choices that are in front of us right now. So we hope you don't leave this to chance and that you proactively engage on an outcome that is now 100% certain. That is the arrival of a red zone heat wave that will kill people. We don't know when it will happen, but we're absolutely certain it will happen before mid-century. It could be next summer, it could be 10 years from now. but it will happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Scott Steinley, and then we have Serena Fish, and then Deb Presley.
Scott Steinling, Ward 5. I know that I've brought this up, Terry, before, but the streets in this town and the sidewalks are pathetic. I've seen, I don't know when the sidewalks are going to be addressed. The storm drains are sunk so low that they're below curb level. In fact, the curb is even with the grass in places. There's no excuse for that. This is the infrastructure in this town is absolutely pathetic. But yet you find money for everything else, but not to address the streets. We've seen the gas tax go up. We've seen the home rule tax go up. We've seen everything go up. But, when costs go up, you learn to cut costs. You don't just keep spending and taxing. And Bloomington has nothing to offer except cold weather in the winter, rotten roads, high taxes. What does Illinois have to offer? Nothing. What would attract people there? Not one lousy thing. I think that we better start learning to live within our means. And we need to start with cutting expenses. And I don't mean with the roads either. Lower the taxes, lower the tax burden. People are already leaving the state in droves because of the taxes in this state and in this city. And you do have something to do with the taxes in this city. You don't have a thing to do with the taxes in the state, but you do in the city. But see, the higher the state income tax goes, the better you like it, because the more you get from the state. It's all what's in it for the city of Bloomington. Better yet, take Bloomington and a normal merchant and become one. But no, you would need one mayor, one city manager, one police chief, one city administration, one city council. We need a larger city council, true, but you need one. Why don't you start and stop and think, where can we really cut expenses and not what is best for me? Now, I think I've been very plain, and Mr. Gleason knows how I feel. He comes in, he secures city administration. We need the police administration. I can see where that's secured, but not city administration. Have a good day. Thank you.
Serena Fish, Deb Presley, and John Reed.
Good evening. I'm Serena Fish, and I live in Miller Park area, Ward 6. I'm here tonight about an item that's on the consent agenda, Inn as in Nancy, which is the Parkview Inn. I have been to numerous liquor commission meetings and complaining about something at the other end of the park with the help of my wonderful mayor, liquor commissioner, don't look like, and Karen Schmidt. We were able to get that under control. Also with the liquor commission, we stopped another liquor store going into our neighborhood. However, tonight I am here to totally recommend 110% the Parkview Inn, the outdoor consumption area. Rick has been such a valuable asset to our community. There's never been any trouble. The last liquor commission meeting, and I've got a witness, Mr. Mayor, the number of phone calls that the police department got in how many years on Parkview Inn? 1. About the fire. I hope that you pass it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Serena. We move next to, excuse me, let's get these right. Deb Presley and then John Reed. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Deb Presley. I live in Bloomington,
and I served as one of the members of the Connect to the Future work group and led the Sustainable Funding subgroup. When we began, I never dreamed that we could collectively develop such a comprehensive set of recommendations that will make a real difference in the lives of so many in our community. Now it is up to you to provide the necessary funding to make these changes happen. When these recommendations are implemented, one rate for all will create an affordable and equitable fare structure for all residents in Bloomington Normal. No longer will community members who have a disability be financially penalized for needing a public transportation accommodation. The expense for that accommodation will be borne by the entire community, as it should be. We don't charge more for elevators, and we shouldn't charge more for paratransit service. Asking some individuals with disabilities to pay nearly $200 a month to get back and forth to work is not affordable or equitable. One rate for all will fix this and say to my son and others who also have disabilities that we value their ability to get around our community for the same fare as their non-disabled peers. Additionally, one rate for all lets community members who are low income know that their financial struggle is recognized and that an affordable monthly pass and fare cap will now exist. Once Connect Mobility is expanded to the city and town limits, it will no longer matter where my son and his friends live, work, worship, or recreate. They will have access to public transportation to get them where they need to go. This is a huge step forward in our community and truly represents the values that our group recognized as important. Many individuals with disabilities are not able to use the fixed routes because they are not ADA accessible. The funding being requested will make every bus stop ADA accessible by 2024. This is the type of community I want to live in. Securing adequate financial support from the city and town will make sure that Connect Transit is in a healthy financial position to implement these changes and provide quality public transportation to our community. Wading through the numbers, it became quite clear that without additional local funding, Connect Transit was not on a sustainable financial path and would sooner or later need to drastically cut service rather than improve it. The additional local dollars being requested will ensure that Connect Transit has adequate funds to provide service and implement the recommendations being put forth by the working group. We as a group were asked to envision the public transportation system that our community wants and deserves. We have done that. Please make this happen by supporting the necessary funding to make these recommendations a reality. Thanks.
Thank you. Last but not least, Mr. John Reed.
As you know, I was here last meeting talking about Low Street and the flooding from the storm sewer. I do appreciate the fact that the city, John from Community Development, Tony from Public Works came out and talked to me. I explained the problem, the neighbors that are having the problem as well. So I do appreciate that. I guess now talks are going on with my landlord. Not quite sure what's going to happen, hoping something happens quick before the rains come. Second part of my comment tonight, that was rather brief. You have a member of the council who's not here tonight who seems to like to, and this is ironic coming from me, who seems to like to attack people on Facebook. Clay County Sheriff John Sandage, one about cash bail, and it's funny that she also commented on other Bernie supporters. It's sort of funny watching the Bernie supporters eat their own. I think maybe you should police that a little better from your council members. Just saying. And that's pretty much all I have. Hopefully we can handle the sewer situation here before too long.
Thank you very much. Thanks. We move next to our consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the council would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? Councilmember Crable, sorry.
7G, Mayor.
7G as in George?
Yes.
Okay. 7G. Anyone else? Councilmember Carrillo, is there anything you'd like to have pulled?
I was going to pull G, so thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda then as presented with the exception of item 7G?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilmember Painter. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So, since we had an all in front of it, I can't ignore that.
I seconded with my light on, though.
Oh. Okay, ladies first. Second by Councilmember Emig. Anyway, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Uh, I need Councilmember Painter here to keep me honest. Okay, if everyone would go ahead and vote. Councilmember Carrillo, how do you vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. Oh, we're over there. 7-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. We move right along, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Crable, who pulled item 7G.
Thank you, Mayor. There were some concerns expressed by fellow council member Jamie Matthey, and he requested, or I don't know if he requested to be pulled, but I talked to Tim about it and wanted to give Tim an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Alderman Crable. Russ, I'm going to go ahead and have you come to the podium, but appreciate the opportunity allowing staff to explain. So that's why 7G is being pulled. Russ Waller is our facilities director and the person best to respond why this is on consent tonight.
So I guess part of that is my responsibility in unfortunately assuming that since this was an ongoing issue that's been done for multiple years now, that it was kind of old hat, and we put it on consent agenda. My apologies for that. Obviously, there's some additional discussion needs to occur, and with your permission, I'd kind of like to go, and I'll do it as quickly as I can, but kind of give you a summary of this, the energy procurement process. So we do have a broker that we've hired to basically get bids for us, and per council's previous request, we always do that with 100% renewable. That 100% renewable, the way we currently do it, is based on the supply company that we ultimately go with going and buy energy recs. And to their benefit and to provide the cheapest electricity to the city and the businesses and customers, residents of the city, they buy the cheapest recs they can buy. Typically, those are wind farm recs, wind energy recs that are bought out of Texas.
So what are RECs?
So the recs are basically just, it's a way of supporting the renewable energy program. And so companies that build the renewable energy products like wind farms, like solar power, they have the ability to sell some of those, that the stock in their company, call it, and then essentially other energy supply companies can then purchase that. So essentially, you're not really buying a stock in their company, but you're buying their the fact that they put up a 100% renewable energy contract. You're purchasing into that program. You're supporting them by buying a small requisition, or what they call a REC, to help support that. So it's to the advantage of companies that can afford to put those things up and have the insight to put those things up. They have that ability to sell that abundance of renewable energy supply for other people to purchase. That good enough an explanation for you? No, that's fine.
And just if we could clarify, I mean, since the one policy recommendation that the council made, previous council, of course, and then we haven't had any issues with that since, has been we wanted to go 100% renewable, and that's about 6 years ago. Right. And so these have always been on consent agenda, not that we can't pull them for separate consideration, but I did want to say that this wasn't an administrative sleight of hand. Sure. Right? This has been standard practice.
Sure.
Once we know we've got 100% renewable, which was the policy that the council put forward, you all followed through with that. Is that correct? Is that correct? A fair statement?
That is correct. In years past, we had brought to council the option to let the residents choose whether what they wanted to go 100% renewable, and based on council direction, we removed that option. We no longer pursue that. So on that, the big thing we're getting here is that we are part of a big conglomerate with Stone Energy Group, so it includes the City of Bloomington, Town of Normal, Village of Hayworth, and 14 other communities. So pooling all of that energy together allows us to get a phenomenal price, a very good price that we can lock in for whatever length of contract that they're recommending at the time. Typically, those are a 2, sometimes a 3-year agreement that we do.
And that's if you do, the people who are in Corn Belt don't get that
Correct. So Cornbelt Energy, a co-op, does not have the ability to be involved with this
Right.
type of program.
Just
So it is
clarifying.
just Ameren. And then the current issue we're talking about is municipal aggregation, which is Bloomington residents and small businesses and includes city small facilities. So anything less than 15,000 kilowatt hours per year is the only thing that can be used in this municipal aggregation. Anything larger than that, so like large industrial companies and stuff in town, they're not part of that. They can make their own deal separate from this. And then our larger facilities, we actually go out with Stone River Group and enter into a different contract. And that's done a few months later than the current municipal aggregation contract ends in June, I believe. So a little bit more just...
Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
No. You could go ahead and finish, and I can save my questions for the end.
Okay.
So the one thing I wanted to end with was there's been a lot of discussion about buying wind energy directly from the companies that are around here. And I wanted to spell that is not possible. Simply those energy companies, and we researched this extensively 3 years ago in 2017. We had Stone River Group help us with this. They provided documentation that we did, I think, present to council, but it's been a few years, so just to refresh everyone's memory. Typically, those wind farms are built, and they already have agreements signed with them prior to them even being constructed. So if you want to get in on a 100% renewable and be involved in that program, you have to invest in that company from day one. So give you a couple examples. Prairie Land Energy, wholly owned subsidiary of University of Illinois, built a wind farm. And then the 100% of that energy goes to the University of Illinois. They also have Rail Splitter Wind Farm in, I'm not sure where that one's at. Actually, I think it's over in the eastern part of the state, or western part of the state. They built a wind farm and then partnered with the University of Illinois and sold a big majority of their supply to the University of Illinois. The University of Illinois entered a 10-year agreement and forked over some cash, essentially, to be able to be invested in that wind farm for them to install it and then supply them with a guaranteed amount of the 100% renewable energy. So the University of Illinois has done that. And I don't have any rates for the Rail Splitter Wind Farm. Which
Well, I think given that this is a consent agenda item, these are the kinds of things that we really should be handling,
Sure.
Frankly, outside of the meeting. But do we have any other questions? Councilmember Crable.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So, in essence, Alderman Matthey references we get these credits from Texas, right? And so, in essence, like you said, through these wind farms and other renewable energy sources, we pay them for their credits to be considered 100% renewable. Is that, in essence, boiling it down?
Yeah, that's a very good summary of it.
And there's just no way to get any of that locally.
Not exactly. I guess what you would have to do, as I was explaining earlier, is if you wanted to be able to partner with a local energy supply company, wind farm supply company, you would have to get in on the ground. So if we knew another one was coming, we would have to go to them, and this is, in their planning stages, and be able to partner with them, enter in a long-term agreement with them, and we would essentially probably be investing some money to get the best rate. But more likely, you're talking a 10, 20-year agreement that you'd have to partner with them and say, we will buy energy from you for this guaranteed period of time, and they have the ability to even increase their rate over that period. So you're not locking in a rate for 10, 20 years.
But you have to do it at the ground floor, which is not possible at this point.
Yeah, at this point, it wouldn't be possible. So most of the wind farms around here basically already have their investments full. All of the energy that they're producing is already basically accounted for and being sold.
And are we keeping track of new ones that may want to start so that we can get on the ground floor?
Quite honestly, no. With limited staffing, we don't have really the ability to keep up on all that. Stone River Group does provide some assistance with that. That's really outside of our agreement with them. We could expand that and ask them to do that for us if we wanted to, but that would probably come at an additional cost. Right now, we do not pay Stone River Group for their services. They're paid out of through the supplier that's chosen.
And one final question. It's really, if we table this, if I move to table this until the next voting meeting, which is March 23rd, we actually have to have a decision by March 23rd. So that's not really feasible if we want to be part of that grouping.
Correct. You could still get it done in that time period, but you're really squeezing this. So we have a meeting set up on March 26th or 7th, I can't remember the exact date. That is when that whole conglomerate will go out to bid. They like to have, Stone River Group likes to have everything resolved by them, have all the resolutions by every single community that's doing this essentially in place, so they know that that's a guaranteed amount. If they wait till that period of time, you're kind of hedging your bets. You don't know if you're actually, if City of Bloomington's not going to be involved, and we don't know it until after the 23rd, they probably would say, no, we're going to have to exclude you. We're going to go out to bid for the rest of the communities. We'll have to come back and deal with you later at a later date.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Crable, did you have any, excuse me, Councilmember Carrillo, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm interested to know what the difference is between, like what the rate would be if we were not purchasing the RECs versus if we were. So like in total, how much money are we spending on the RECs?
I try to bring everything I could think of. That's one. Let me see if I did. I think they did put that in the, when we entered the agreement in 2017, the town of Normal chose basically the state required renewable energy, I think, which at the time was like 7%, and that increases every year. Their rate, yeah, and I'm sorry, I thought I had it on here. I do not.
That's okay. I don't want to hold us up. So I was one of the folks that was involved in the municipal aggregation campaign and was actually engaged in pushing the city to make sure that we were purchasing renewable energy credits. I think since then, research has come out that has made me second guess whether that's the best use of our money because, as you mentioned, people think that when we say that we're 100% renewable, it means that we're actually getting our energy from renewable energy sources, but it just means that we are paying some kind of arbitrary amount to say that we're offsetting all the dirty energy we're using by purchasing like one credit of good energy per every credit of bad, or per every kilowatt of bad energy that we're using. So not to overcomplicate it, but can you just, again, this is the part that was not clear to me, like, is it possible for us to move to table this until our next voting meeting or not?
Well, it's always possible for table it. I'm not sure, Russ, what, other than possibly harm us, would it gain us anything? I mean, this is a broader policy issue.
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting is that we might say we don't want to purchase RECs if we don't think that that's the best use of our money, and we want to use that money instead to take on renewable energy projects locally. So we could say all that money that we're saving, we're going to instead do X, Y, Z, and actually go with the non-renewable credits.
Isn't it the case, if I clarify, isn't the money that's being saved, this is not the city that's saving the money, these are our constituents that are saving money, is that correct? So there's no real pool of cash for us to dip into, is that right?
There's no pool of cash for us to dip into, but we do save money as a city. Like I said, smaller use facilities of the city are part of the municipal aggregation program.
Right.
But a lot of, it's mainly your residents and small businesses. We have a very small amount of that with our smaller facilities. I did find the rates, I did look at this.
Great.
So the regular rate, which included the state mandated renewable percent, was 0.0507 cents per kilowatt hour. Our rate with 100% renewable based on buying the RECs was 0.0539. So terrible with math up here, but you're looking at what, 30 point, no, actually not even 30 cents, 0.003 2 was the difference that we paid more. So it is very negligible. I didn't run the math on how much that actually costs, a consumer. It is not very much money that you're actually paying to get that REC. Because like I said, they're finding it the cheapest way they can, which is the cheapest REC they can buy.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other questions? Other questions? Councilmember Boland?
Oh, how long is this contract for, the one that you're going to be signing?
So we don't know. Like I said, typically they're a 2 or 3 year. So what they do is the brokerage firm will come back to the city manager
and he will present multiple options. And usually we go with the cheapest, but a lot of times they'll recommend going to the 3-year as opposed to the 2-year because they're looking at fluctuations, potential changes in the market, and so they kind of make a recommendation on which one we should go with. The precedent and past history has typically been 2 years. We typically don't go longer than 2 years. That's always, like I said, subject to change.
My point is that if we're not locked in for 20 years or 10 years, instead of tabling it, go ahead. I'm going to move to accept as presented. And in the meantime, during the next year or two, do some research into all the questions that have been raised.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Painter. Further questions or discussion? Councilmember Black.
Thank you. Thank you. So I feel like we've had this conversation a couple of different times. I don't know if you can answer this question, but if I'm hearing my colleagues correctly, there's concern about that these RECs are not renewable, that they're from some other energy source other than renewable energy. Am I hearing that right? And that's the concern?
Not exactly.
Okay.
So
what is the concern?
To clarify, the concern is that, yes, you are technically offsetting your 1 kilowatt of dirty energy for a kilowatt produced somewhere in Texas by a wind farm, but particularly when you're going with the cheapest RECs possible, you're not actually doing anything like to substantially support the production of renewable energy. Like people will argue that. So the question is whether it even makes sense for us to like spend that extra, perhaps negligible, but it's still money to get those REC credits.
So are you suggesting then that we don't, if I could clarify too, just that we don't go with 100% renewable?
Yeah, that doesn't sound great, but I'm saying that there could be more effective ways for us to work towards renewable energy for the city than perhaps purchasing these credits that haven't been demonstrated to be super productive or supportive of the renewable energy industry.
Councilmember Black, I'm sorry.
Yes, that actually took my question, Terry. So thank you, Jen, for answering that. I feel like we fought about this in a number of different occasions in the past.
For 7 years, actually.
And the conversation is kind of, comes to its full circle. Time is a flat circle, as if this were True Detective. So I guess from where I sit and what we kind of landed on was the idea that electrical aggregation was going to save our residents money. It got passed by the residents, and then we had a choice 7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, to go either renewable through the credits or not. And we chose renewable, which was slightly more than the not renewable. And if someone was upset about that, they had the opportunity to opt out of electrical aggregation. And I guess I'm not understanding why we'd throw the baby out with the bathwater to get rid of this entirely so that we could potentially get more satisfying renewable energy, even though we are technically still getting renewable energy. I'm not following that. So I know there's a motion on the table, so I'll be supporting it this evening. I know Jamie had some questions, and I don't want to speak for him about the local company that we'd be using, but it sounds like we can't use it here locally, and that kind of tracks what we've heard before. So thank you for providing that information. I'd like to know, though, if this is a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract, what alternatives can we have to be, could we be better? What would that require us to do? I don't know that information at this juncture, but I'm happy with what we have right now.
Okay. And then it is the case that we could certainly be looking at what other communities are. Is there a model anywhere? If this isn't perfection, and we know it's not perfection for sure, if there are warts and problems with it, who's on the vanguard of doing something different? I'm sorry, Councilmember Painter.
Well, that was my question. It was for Jen. Apparently, she has some ideas about what we could do to get 100% renewable energy in our community. At this juncture, I don't know of anything like that unless we start to build our own grid, which would be horribly expensive. But this is the first I've heard of that. And so, Jen, what ideas are on the table for that?
To be clear, I'm not suggesting that we could ever be 100% renewable because, as you said, that would require us to build a grid. I am just suggesting that there are other pathways. I guess that by saying that we're 100% renewable, people might be under the impression that we don't have more work to do towards that. But just saying, you know, the credits aren't everything. It certainly doesn't totally offset the type of energy that we're using. And so, you know, like we should continue to explore other ways that we can be supportive of that, but agree with Scott that, you know, we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can certainly move forward on this contract and then look for other ways to move this along.
Okay. Thank you. And we have Councilmember Emig, and then we're going to vote on this motion. Thank you.
I'm happy to move this along. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
My hearing of all of this is that one thing we really need to rely on is sort of the power of the aggregate and the fact that we're doing this in partnership with a lot of other communities. So that takes time to coordinate. And going forward, if there are better sources of renewable energy, we're on the brink of creating and discovering, and the technology is really expanding. But I don't think we're there yet. So I'm interested in continuing to go forward, but I think for now, going with this aggregate does make sense. So I'm voting in favor.
Sorry.
Please.
One more thing that
Russ.
might provide some additional information on what we are doing. And you'll see this coming up probably in April. We have partnered with the Ecology Action Center. We've done this for multiple years. That proposal will be coming back to you in April, and they've increased that support this year to include stuff just like we're talking about, for them to look at potential sources of other renewable sources we could look at, and we could use not only our broker, but the Ecology Action Center to help us further our responsibility and requirements into getting into the renewable energy. So you'll see that coming forward. Right now, that is not supported by anything other than the general fund, which at their proposal is somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000 a year that we spend on that.
Okay. And then it's also something that we could contact the Illinois Municipal League, the International City County Management Association, the National League of Cities, U.S. Conference of Mayors, who's on the vanguard of this, and what are they doing differently. Anyway, at this point, if everyone will go ahead and vote with the motion that's on the floor. Okay. Councilmember Carrillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries 7-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. We're going to go ahead and move to a public hearing under 8A on the 2021 proposed budget as presented by the Finance Department. And I'm going to declare the public hearing of the City of Bloomington's proposed budget in order. And if anyone would like to speak on this, and you would have up to 3 minutes. Going once, going twice. Sold at no comments. Okay. Our public hearing is ended. We move right along to item 9A. We have presentation of Not in Our Town's 2019 annual report as requested by the Administration Department. And we are going to start out with a presentation and then a council discussion. So I'm going to turn this over first to Mr. Gleason, who I think is going to turn it over to some of the people in our audience.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mr. Mike Matika is going to present, as he did last year, on Not in Our Town. Mike?
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Council, and citizens. Just wanted to give a quick update and thank the city for your continued involvement and support with Not in Our Town. There are copies of our annual report up here. Angelique Raki is with me here from BCAI. She's the chair of our Arts Committee, so she can add a little bit to this also. Just want to point out just a few things we've done, but this December will be 25 years of Not in Our Town in Normal, which the folks in California who made the first film blame us for starting the movement, because we were the first community to really take this and run with us. And also want to commend the Bloomington Human Relations Commission. They gave their first Martin Luther King Community Award to Not in Our Town at their luncheon last year. So appreciate that recognition. Just a couple things we've been doing. We did a breakfast club with United Way with about 15 low-income youth to kind of expose them to job opportunities and opportunities in the community. Right now we're assessing a survey with Illinois State University social studies faculty. We surveyed junior high and high school kids in the community and had 4,500 responses. So we're very curious to get the input of our young people about their own sense of security and how they feel within our community. One of the more moving things we did this past year was a program with Kathy O'Malley at Illinois Wesleyan, who has made multiple trips interviewing children who are in border detention camps. And so we had her give a report one evening and then had local junior high and high school kids read the testimonies that she had gathered. And it was very moving for the audience, but particularly moving for those young people in terms of engaging them. So I just want to give you a sense that, you know, Not in Our Town has always been a voluntary activity, but always trying to engage the community in issues of discrimination and making sure we have a safe and accessible community for everyone. And I think Angelique has a few things she'd like to share too.
So I'll just report on, my name is Angelique Ratchke, and yes, I'm the director and founder of BCAI School of Arts, but I do chair the Arts and Culture Committee. The arts had an explosion last year, lots of collaborations, powerful collaborations, one being the Market Street mural with Art Illusion and Illinois Art Station, BCAI. That was very, very powerful. And then we also are part of the Central Illinois Community Educators Group. So if you are not familiar with that group, that is basically everyone that does the non-school system education in the community. So U of I Extension, both libraries, BCAI School of Arts, the Museum of History. There's multiple entities there, the Aviation Museum, et cetera. And we all meet quarterly and see how we can collaborate further and strengthen learning opportunities for both the educators and learners in the community. It's a very powerful group. So that's been going on for years now. Mixed Fuse Evolve is an event that BCI puts on every single year, and last year the collaboration basis and the theme for last year was all things indigenous. There has been an extensive attack on the indigenous populations for centuries, and we wanted to bring light to the fact that they are definitely still here, very much still here, very much still present, and there's a significant amount of information that we don't know. Simple things, even to go as simple as it is not a Native American culture. There are 50-plus tribes, and every single one has a different culture, so you cannot group them all into one. Simple things like that, all the way to extensive knowledge and their contributions. We collaborated with the McLean County Museum of History. They put on an event with, I'm missing the name as I speak right now, but that was a music event where we did a circle with the community. And then Normal Theater put on 2 documentaries, one about the mascot controversy, and then the other one about Rumble. It was called Rumble, and it's about the music contributions of the indigenous communities. Next would be Make Music Normal. We partnered with the town of Normal. BCAI partnered with the town of Normal and Not in Our Town, and we put on a micro hip hop festival. And the reason why we wanted to do that is because we wanted to eliminate all the fear of hip hop. It is not something to fear. It is an actual culture with authentic elements that are gorgeous and inviting and absolutely phenomenal. And the community needs to know about it and realize how much they can actually be a part of that. That's something that BCAI likes to promote. And so we did that, and we will be doing a more extensive version this year. So Make Music Normal will be phenomenal. Then we also did, of course, we were part of the NAACP Freedom Fund Banquet. We put on a presentation. Our dancers did a love-themed performance. That was very, very powerful, and of course it's on YouTube. And that pretty much covers the art. There's a lot more. You'll see. You've seen it. But those were like the really big pieces that we did.
Okay, thank you. And this month will be our 3rd collaboration with the Museum of History for our Community in Conversation. And we've done 2 of those already. Going to do another one in March and one more in April. And we've had 70 to 80 people show up for each of those so far. And if it seems like it's working, we're talking about continuing that in the fall. So just want to thank you for your support. I know there's appropriate to ask for any questions or comments, but just try to help create that community environment that's positive for everyone.
Thank you so much for all you do. Very much appreciate that. And Councilmember Painter.
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for all your work on this. This is the kind of thing that makes Bloomington Normal such a nice community to live in. And I've seen what you've done with the kids. You get so much out of them, and that's great. You keep them involved and keep them on the right path. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Painter. Councilmember Emmett.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for that presentation. I believe that the arts can really save lives, and for young people that is more important than ever, especially right now. So I appreciate all that you've done and are doing. Mike, when will the data from that survey be available,
we are
and how will you
working
share?
with ISU. We've got 3 social work and 1 criminal justice professor that are taking the data that we've got from the school surveys, and so they can put it in a real analysis and a context. And at this point, what we're thinking of doing is inviting community leaders, school boards, school administrations to do more of a roundtable with it and sit down together, share the information, and give people time to reflect. We don't want it to be accusatory, but what can we learn from what the young people have told us? And when the survey was conducted, each principal was given their building results, but it's not been pulled together comprehensively. But we wanted each school principal to see what reflection and maybe just, and this is probably being too, not a thorough, but one of the comments from one of the young people was, we are the mental health generation, which talked about the tensions about school shootings, and all the tensions that young people are feeling. And I thought that was a very interesting comment for somebody to identify themselves in that way. So a lot of what came out of this, even initial, is a lot of anxiety kind of issues that young people are seeing, plus a feeling. The other thing we're trying to find out is, where do they feel safe? Do they feel safe at home, in the neighborhood, at school? Where do they not feel safe? And that was something else we were trying to pull out from the responses we got.
Councilmember Milawample.
Oh, okay, I just want to add my thanks to you for the work that you do, and particularly I was thinking about Not in Our School. That's been a fantastic program. It's given a chance to young people to find their voice around these issues and also move on to bigger and better things. As a matter of fact, I know a couple of those young people. They live with me, and it has allowed them to to really find their voice. And now that they're in college, they're also building on some of the things that they've learned from Not in Our School. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carrillo, do you have any comments, questions?
No, just thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And for those that don't know, with Not in Our Schools, we have a Not in Our School council in every high school, junior high, and some of the primary schools in town, where the students identify what they see going on, and then we've got some retired school counselors that work with them as an appropriate way to raise those issues. But it really is a youth-led effort, and I just am very impressed every year when the high school students go to the junior high kids and say, we're going to pass this on to you to continue this, so it really creates a sense of the young people feeling some, what you're saying, some ownership in having a say what goes on in their own environment. So,
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Angelique. Appreciate it very much. Okay, we moved right along to item 9B, presentation of the Bloomington Police Department's 2019 annual report. And we have a 15-minute presentation and a 10-minute council discussion. Chief Donath is coming forward. Welcome, Chief, and this is your first rodeo in this role.
I know. I will say I feel a little disappointed because Public Works and everybody else gets to come up here and talk a lot, and I don't. So that was my shot, right? No, it's okay.
But only 15 minutes.
One time per year is perfectly fine. All right, so find the keyboard here. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Good evening. Glad to be here and share with you our 2019 annual report. I'll start off with some basic crime statistics. So overall, for the year 2019, our Part 1 uniform crime report statistics were 3% lower than 2018, which is representing 45 fewer reported incidents of the different crime types. So technically speaking, in the last 10 years, this would be another record again for low crime in Bloomington, which is fantastic that we find ourselves in this position. So we're very happy and very proud about that particular thing. Now, when we look at UCR Part 1 crime statistics, these have been used since like the 1930s with the FBI, and here are the crime types that are actually used in that calculation. So we'll actually spend a little bit of time talking about some of these in more detail. The first one, homicide, we had 9 in 2018, which was completely out of character for our city. I don't know that we've ever seen that before. In 2019, we returned to what's more of a normal number for us with just 1. Criminal sexual assaults, they also went down pretty substantially. I like to compare numbers a lot of times to the 5-year average as opposed to just year to year, because those things do have this ebb and flow type of effect, for crime. But it is still lower than the 5-year average. Robberies, however, did not go down. They went up substantially. They're about 9 more than our 5-year average, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more because they associate with the next group, the aggravated batteries, which also went up and is substantially higher than our 5-year average. Burglaries continued to go down. That's been a trend for some time now. Thefts have continued to go down. That's been a trend. Arsons remain about the same, and motor vehicles are down also. So overall, that 3% down in the Part 1 crime categories. All right, so we'll take a look at some of these specific crime types. Homicides, you'll see the chart there, 0, 0, 3, 9, 1. So you're seeing those normal typical years for us of 0, 0, maybe a 3, maybe a 1. That 9 was the one that was the odd one out. Last year we had 1 homicide, April of 2019, over on Orchard Road. There were actually 3 people that were struck by gunfire in that incident, and 1 person was killed. The 3 suspects involved have all been arrested and are awaiting adjudication. So now one thing I'll note also is that 2018, for the homicides we had then, the frequent number of them or the high number of them, that'll be a little bit of draw or a pull on our manpower this summer, in the sense that there'll be multiple trials for that, and our detectives spend a lot of time in the prep work and the trial time for that. So that's just something to note, that those trials are actually coming up now for those prior incidents. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a crime type or a type that's not part of the Part 1 UCR criminal statistics. We keep track of the number of shootings that we have in our city. Last year in 2019, we had 33 with 12 subjects hit by gunfire, resulting in that 1 death that we referred to. And if you look at the 5-year numbers, again, you can see that ebb and flow of 17, 41, 24, 15, and 33. But when we talk about the 33 being higher than 2018, part of that is the aggravated batteries that were in that prior slide. So shootings are considered the aggravated battery that fits into that first UCR crime type. So part of the increase in in shootings actually contributes to the aggravated battery numbers. And there's going to be a common thread amongst those and the robberies that we'll talk about in a second. Now, what we're seeing in these shootings we're seeing simply gun possession by males, very young, under the age of 22 in almost every single case. So it's not difficult to identify, who's involved in these particular circumstances. And we believe it's really a cultural issue. This is what society has kind of led us to, is that there's this culture of guns and having guns and using guns and posting pictures of ourselves, videos of ourselves with guns, and it's not a Bloomington issue. It's really a nationwide issue. All right, so moving on to robberies. In 2019, we recorded 57 robberies. which is 9 above our 5-year average. And again, you see a little bit of that ebb and flow on the robberies. And kind of consistent with those other gun-related incidents, we had 30 of them that were street-level robberies. And the common thing that we see there is somebody's got a posting for an Xbox or a Sony PlayStation for sale, and a person shows up to pay him or buy it from him, and then they actually get robbed by gunpoint for that money. And so that was the common theme that we saw in 2019 that caused our robbery numbers to go up. But again, it's that gun culture, and it's the association with guns and young males that's part of that equation. Now that being said, one of the things that I would just like to advise everyone in our city is that our front parking lot of our police department is available for people to conduct their transactions. We've said that for years. We encourage it. We continue to encourage it to avoid some of those situations where you could find yourself, in a difficult position.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, yes. So again, the gun possession plays a role in that increase. All right, so another, this is one of the Part 1 crimes. Motor vehicle thefts, we saw a slight decrease. Numbers are not horrible, but the interesting part about motor vehicle thefts is that almost every single one of them, they occurred when people left keys in their car. So you could say it's almost 100% preventable crime in a sense that that's what we saw of our 74.
Keep your keys with you.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, people sometimes ask us, or a lot of times they ask us, where are the cars? What are they doing with the cars? They're stealing the cars. Where are they going? What are they doing with them? Locally here, they just drive them around for a couple, 3 days, and they ditch them and move on about their lives. So that's where they're going. They're not leaving town or those type of things occurring like they did, in years past. All right, so another type of crime that's not a UCR one, kind of bouncing back to that, are DUI arrest. And DUI arrest last year was a record number for us, 349, which beat the old record in 2016 of 300, so it's a pretty substantial increase over that one particular year. And we believe that this is a very important aspect for our police department to enforce this type of crime. One particular officer actually accounted for 118 of those DUI arrests. So he was a busy person, and we appreciate all of his hard work. But I will tell you that overall, DUI enforcement remains a high priority. As you all know, we've had some tragic incidents in the last 10 years, and it's unfortunate. I'd like to think of those 349, traffic stops that we had, that we prevented somebody from being in an accident, from hurting somebody, from killing somebody, by getting them off the streets before something like that bad happened. So we'll continue to enforce this. So when we talk about the biggest issue that we see facing us, it relates back to those robberies, those aggravated batteries, youth with guns, those type of crimes. One of the things that former Chief Wheeler did was last year, he looked at that and he said, you know what, instead of working on stuff from a after-the-fact perspective, after the incidents happened, after the trauma has already occurred, what can we do on the front end to prevent those crimes from actually happening in the first place? So he moved on with partnering with a group called City Life, ran by Andrew Held here in town, to work on helping youth 11 to 16 that are at risk, that might find themselves in those positions where they might find themselves handling guns or being in this type of culture, and trying to work with them to prevent these type of things from happening. And they work on mentoring, leadership skills, employment, conflict resolution, which is a big part of it, is how do we handle conflict, and trying to hope to prevent the crimes before they actually happen. We as a police department last year partnered with them in regards to supporting them financially to help that occur. We will continue to do that this year in hopes that we can continue to gain on it. Last year the results were 13 students gained employment, 2 students took leadership roles at jobs, 1 student enrolled in college, and 6 students graduated high school. And the important thing to take out of that is that each of these things that people accomplish, these young people accomplish, helps build their self-esteem. And the more that you build your self-esteem, the more you can kind of stack on blocks in your life to make your own life successful and steer away from the things that could get you in trouble. So we're a really good thing. All right, so let's move on to departmental goals. We've got several of these. We're going to be fairly aggressive about the things we're trying to do. First is maintain an open dialogue with the community regarding police-community relations. We think that we already do this pretty well. I will tell you that our public information officer, John Furman, does a great job with our social media and outreach with the public. I will take on more responsibility for this year now that I've got my feet wet a little bit and got some things lined up, and we will continue with this because this is important. People will not trust you if they don't have a relationship with you, and so we need to have those relationships. Second of all, increase departmental efficiencies both internally and externally. One of the things that I tasked all of our supervisors with was evaluating everything that we do and why we do it, and making sure that what we're doing is pertinent to 2020 and not 1994 when I started, because things have changed, and we need to make sure that we're moving along with that and making changes that are appropriate. Third, work with local mental health programs to find alternatives to hospitalization and or arrest. You know, we live in a society where mental health is a big issue right now amongst adults and children. That was previously mentioned. And so we recognize that's the community that we live in. And I think as a police department, we need to recognize that, and we need to look at the practices that we have and make sure that we are adapting to what the needs of our community are. Even if it's not law enforcement, maybe it's just something a little bit different on those front-end contacts that we have with people. Fourth, continue our focus on reducing violent street-level gun and gang crimes, and that's from that prevention side as well as the enforcement side. We're going to also continue to use innovation through next-gen technologies, using big data, which is simply just taking the data that we already have and using that to determine where we should be putting our resources. We'll continue to use body-worn cameras. Those have been very valuable to us. Mobile systems, our in-car systems, and public safety cameras. We've had a handful of those out there for 6 to 8 years, and they've been very valuable in reducing crime and helping reduce the fear of crime. And so we'll continue to add to that a little bit and to keep our city in a good direction. And then lastly, increase departmental diversity through the recruitment and hiring process. I will tell you that we're having some success with this already. We've identified some good people for our next hiring process here coming up in May. And so we continue to work on that and hope to improve that, especially as I can build some more relationships in the community. So that being said, next slide is questions. Anybody have any questions?
Of our chief.
Yes.
Comments? Councilmember Emick.
Thank you for the presentation. I couldn't help but hear a connection between Mike Matika's Not in Our Town presentation regarding mental health issues among our youth, and I wondered if you have been working at all in concert with Chestnut Health System's FUSE program.
Yeah, actually we have. It hasn't been open that long, just since this last fall, and we have partnered with them already, and we've had some clients go to them. Their next phase that's opening up is the Triage Center, and they will open up a week from today, actually. So yes, absolutely, we're partnering with them. The director of that came to our staff meeting and provided additional details about their programs and what they're doing so that our officers become aware of what's out there.
Councilmember Craybill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Donath, for the presentation and all the work that you and your officers do every day. Just a couple of questions. Appreciate all the information in the report. When we talk about shootings, right, and the increase in those shootings, when you look at other communities in Illinois, in central Illinois, are we seeing the same type of trends?
Yes, we are. Shootings are up in all other, mid-sized cities in Illinois. We're actually, personal to ourselves, probably substantially lower than some of those comparable-sized cities. But yes, it's a nationwide, Illinois-wide type of, environment we find ourselves in.
Great. And about the DUI number of increase in arrest, how much of that is related, I guess, alcohol versus drug use? Have we seen any type of increase related to the making cannabis becoming legal on January 1st?
The vast majority of the DUI arrests will be alcohol related. And as far as anything that we've seen so far in this first couple of months, we have not seen very much, if at all, related to the cannabis legalization on the DUIs. And, you know, I'll just say what I told the media a couple times is that we don't have a dispensary here in town, and so it hasn't really changed for us the availability of it. So I didn't really expect to see anything through this juncture. But if that changes in the future, we might see some of those type of things occurring.
Thank you. And one last question. Do our officers receive some sort of implicit bias training?
Yes, actually we do. It's part of the requirements that we have, and we will be having our full staff meeting at the end of March, and all of our supervisors, all 30 of them, will be receiving specific implicit bias training from Chief Aaron Woodruff from Illinois State University Police Department.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Mulomboy.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to get on back.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, I'll get to you. Thank you, Jen. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation and the work that you're doing. You said that you were fairly successful this year in terms of recruitment in the area of diversity, so I wanted you to share with us what are some of the things that you're doing differently, maybe?
Well, I'd say probably since I took over, I just know that we've put a greater emphasis on our reach out to the community in regards to that. We partnered with the PSCRB board and requested some participation for different groups that were invested in it to assist us in getting new applicants. And so we put a strong media presence out there through our Facebook account to try to help also increase that. We've also met with Illinois State University and asked them about suggestions for how we can do that, with their graduates or their impending graduates. So we've done a handful of things, but there's more things to be done. I can tell you of the 102 candidates that passed our test and at the level that we directed and invited to our next test, the physical test. Out of those 102 people, 25 were minorities. And then out of the ones that came, passed the test, all those type of things, we ended up with 49, and we narrowed it down to like the top 12 or 15 candidates that we really liked, and 6 of those are minorities. And right as we stand right now, we have 3 that, assuming they pass the last couple of tests, that we'll offer position to. So that's pretty good.
Thank you very much. Alderwoman Carrillo.
Thank you. So I was going to ask about cannabis, but I think Alderman Crable already covered that. I'm sorry. Your questions were really choppy from my end, Jeff, so if I'm repeating something, just feel free to let me know. The other question was, you had mentioned that as part of your goals, you were looking to take preventative measures around gun violence, particularly involving youth. Can you say a little bit more about what that looks like for the department in the coming year?
Yeah, so, and I know, unfortunately, you couldn't see the slide, but, we've partnered with City Life organization who works specifically with youth ages 11 to 16 in our community. Primarily, the Bloomington Junior High School, Bloomington High School. So that's a starting point. We've also partnered with the Boys and Girls Program. So those are the areas that we're focusing on right now.
Gotcha. The other question around technology in the coming year, do you have a sense of how many more of those cameras you are looking to use across the city this year?
We hope to add 5 to 10 more. Wherever the crime trends dictate that we should place them.
Gotcha. And then one more question, which is, around the conversation of the creation of the PSCRB, I think, part of the discussion that council had was, how they can be partners to the police department in helping to anticipate some of the things coming down the pike and to bridge the gap between police and communities. So can you share a little bit more about what that work has looked like, what that partnership has looked like?
Specifically related to the recruiting efforts or overall?
Just overall, the relationship between the police department and the PSCRB and where you see that going in the coming year or years.
Yeah, well, I see it, well, first of all, its status is great. We have a great partnership with them, get along with them perfectly, well, and we just see that to continue to expand in whatever way that might be beneficial. I will tell you that they've been very, helpful to us in a sense of trying to, any suggestions we have that they might be able to help with, provide information. They have done that. So, and I see them as a good fit for our community in the sense that it's a place for people to turn to that if they're not satisfied with, our investigation, that they've got somebody else they can turn to make sure that we followed all the rules and did the things we were supposed to, which goes back to our next-gen technology, which is the use of the body-worn cameras, which have been fantastic for those situations, because now we get to watch and listen to exactly what transpired, and it makes our job really easy in reviewing those things, because now it's no longer trying to recreate that situation. We just get to watch it, which is fantastic.
Thank you so much. The very, very last thing, because I have seen this going around in the news, and somebody actually brought it up during public comment, have seen a number of local officials taking, positions as I think the state is considering making some changes to the cash bail system. Do you know if are you anticipating that the Bloomington Police Department will have a position on that issue, or, is that a big problem here in our community, people getting out on bail and reoffending?
Well, you got a lot of questions there, so let me try to answer all those. So number one, we want to definitely make sure that the public is informed about the pros and cons of those type of situations, and that they're also informed about what the actual true numbers are in McLean County, and as opposed to the nation or Illinois or Chicago or other locations. We want to make sure our community knows what's going on in its surroundings. As far as a position, our position is to inform the community of, what the pros and cons are based upon, our expertise in these areas and having worked in these areas for a significant period of time, so that they are aware of it. Trying to think what other questions you had in there.
Was there something that wasn't answered, Jen?
No, I think that about covered it. Thank you.
Great. Okay, anything else? Thank you, Chief. Thank you for all your work, and please convey to Bloomington's finest our gratitude.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. At this point, we move to the Finance Director's report. Mr. Gleason.
It was a mistake on the agenda, Mayor.
Okay, I was kind of wondering, but I thought I'd still ask you. Now I'll move then to the City Manager's report.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I've actually got a handful of items. Nikki, do me a favor. Stand up, please. I just want to take this opportunity to share with Council and the community that one of our very own, Nikita Richards, works in our HR department. She was recognized last month by Treasurer Frericks for one of 7 in Black History Month. And I'm going to read this so I don't butcher this. Yeah, I'm going to read it. Nikki is a Bloomington resident, obviously, who serves on the Illinois Council of Women and Girls, and it was for that reason that she was one of 7 high-achieving black professionals that received the award at the Capitol. Another thing that I want to share is the comment that was quoted. She said at the time that she received this from Treasurer Frericks and the Lieutenant Governor is up there to the left, none of what we're doing is for ourselves, she said, and we shouldn't keep it to ourselves. I pray that all we think about the next generation of leaders as we continue this great work. So one of our own, one of 7 that were recognized during Black History Month in February, and I just wanted to share that with the community. Very proud of you. Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Nikki. Thank you. Next item is the schedule of events that Scott will put up, and we're going to keep that up there. I've actually got a couple of other items. The folks can see the different things going on in the community. The next item, this was at the request of one of our employees, Joe Darter, who, wearing a different hat, is an executive officer for the Friends of Everbloom. It's a 501c3 conservation organization that promotes conservation practices at Evergreen Lake and Lake Bloomington and throughout the watersheds. And it is quite simply National Fix a Leak Week, starting on the 14th through the 22nd. And just wanted to bring some awareness to the community. We're going to have a link on the website, city's website tomorrow. If anybody's interested, they can go to that. Next item, and this is front and center on everybody's minds, no slide, but the COVID-19, the coronavirus. It's one that I know council's aware, but I want to make sure that the community's aware. This is something that internally staff have been talking about, for the last couple of weeks, and it seems to be ramping up, as do our internal discussions. But live tomorrow will be a link on our city website that is driving people or allowing them access to the different links that we feel are prominent and important, whether it's the CDC, whether it's the Illinois Department of Public Health, but really who will drive this communication as a region. It's the McLean County Health Department. So even though we're just passing and allowing access through our city website right on the main page, for the most up-to-date information, it's something that our residents look to us to provide that information. So even though there might not be anything original from us at the City of Bloomington, they'll have that connectivity to what we deem very critical information regarding this important topic right now. And lastly, One Voice trip that the Economic Development Council, we do this every year. Community leaders, elected labor representatives, and just a good cross-section of the stakeholders in the community make a trip out to D.C. And we talk to some of the different federal agencies, our federal leaders, and make a pitch for some of the things that we feel deserve to be invested on with federal dollars, and try to show what the return on that investment would be. We met with both Senators Durbin and Duckworth. We met with both of our congressmen, LaHood and Davis, and the meetings were very beneficial. The city's ask this year, we also, met with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, and the one ask and the only road project when we had the One Voice trip is Hamilton Bund to Commerce. And we're gearing up to make a submittal under this round of applications on the BUILD grant, and definitely wanted to get that on everybody's radar, and I think we did a good job of that. Alderman Jamie Matthey was an elected member that attended that as well. And I just wanted to share that real quick, and that's all I've got, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of that. And we want to thank Alderman Matthey. This is the first time in 7 years I did not go, mainly, well, the only reason was because I was a bit paranoid because I was homeless until yesterday. Anyway, but I do want to also reiterate and thank the staff for all the work that they've done on the budget and the last phases of the budget and getting it through. But I also do want to say that I know that Mr. Gleason has been involved with not just people in Washington, but in other places and other communities. What are they doing? What are they preparing to think about in terms of for the coronavirus? And certainly I have, in terms of being in contact with other mayors, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors actually has sent out, even just in the last week, 4 separate emails, which you get maybe 2 a week. We've gotten 4 just on this in the last week. That is those of the metro mayors in the United States, and to share ideas and concerns that they have, and then strategies that they have for moving forward as we move forward. So we, in addition to the McLean County Health Department, which of course has primary responsibility for this, we're trying to get ideas for what other communities are doing and what kind of strategies they have as this continues. So thank you, Mr. Gleason, for that, and certainly the citizens, we want to assure you that in addition to the health department, the city is on top of this. Thank you. Aldermanic comments.
I want to get on stack, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Carrillo and then Bolin.
Oh, I didn't know I was going to get to go first. That's awesome. I guess the first thing is that I want to echo some of the comments that were made during the public comment period around the climate mitigation action that we're being asked to take. I know I received an email with a request for a meeting, so I'm hopeful that we can get those conversations moving as soon as possible so that we can figure out how that will affect the 2021 budget. So I'm looking forward to having those conversations, and I actually think it's a really great opportunity, especially given that our partners in Normal seem to be game to start to put our heads together to think about this. So there's that. The second thing is, unfortunately, I'm going to, just as a precaution, going to cancel the community council meeting that I had planned for this Thursday at 6 p.m., but I'm still going to hold those hours so that people can call me during that time. So if there were questions that you wanted to direct my way, you can still reach out to me. And finally, in light of that, just want to encourage everybody to take precautions around the coronavirus stuff. I don't think panic really helps anybody, but, like today I almost caught myself like going into this meeting, and then I stopped and thought about the fact that there is some small chance that I might have caught this and that I would be spreading it around to people without even knowing that I was carrying it. And so just want to encourage folks to think about how this not only affects them, but how it affects other people around them with compromised immune systems and vulnerable populations. So please, if you think you're at risk in any way, shape, or form, stay home and keep people healthy.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Carrillo. Councilmember Bolin, and then Councilmember Crable.
Okay. I don't want to make any light about the coronavirus because I do think it's very serious, but here's a bit of advice. Wash your hands to the Macarena. That's how long you need to wash your hands in order to, people just go like this.
Should we do the
But
Macarena
idea
as well?
is
Not everybody remembers the Macarena, but I do, Councilmember Bolin.
I'm prepared to sing it for everybody.
You need to do that.
Not the actual washing
But anyway, the main thing is personal hygiene and keep your heads away from your face. I think that's the main thing. And cover your mouth.
Right.
So.
Thank you very much. And that's the Councilmember Crable and then Millawamboy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. First of all, thanks. I want to thank the working group for Connect Transit and Deb Presley, who was part of that working group, who came up and spoke. This past first Friday, I attended a number of events. It was based on women's history or focused on women. Attended the International Women's Day celebration at the Bistro that night. Jamie and Kelly did a great job at Red Raccoon. Back in the back there, they had 4 pop-up shops with women's businesses back there. And then Eaton Galleries actually had 3 young sculptors, female sculptors there with their work. So that was all great to see. I'll go ahead and say this. Julie may not say it, but I'll say it. We had a great final presentations for the Multicultural Leadership Program, and we had 5 projects that teams helped out. BCAI, what Angelique just spoke about earlier, Autism McLean, Dreams Are Possible, West Market Street Council, Heartland College. So a big impact to the nonprofits in our community. If you're interested, applications for the next class are open, and graduation is April 25th of this year. And finally, just a reminder that Jen and I's educational session is at the end of this month. Hopefully that won't need to be canceled. It's at 12 p.m. at 803 West Olive, Wayman AME Church. Just wanted to do a shout out to Scott, who's met for a short period of time with Jen and I about questions. And I just wanted to note this will be the 3rd year that I've focused on our budget and learning it. And just every time I talk to Scott, I learn a little bit more. And then trying to prepare this educational session and thinking not only about learning it, but teaching it, I'm learning even more. So so I appreciate that, Scott. And
Could you clarify the date on that?
March 28th. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Milawamboy.
I just briefly was going to say that last Thursday, I did my best impersonation of the mayor for the IHSA girls basketball.
Okay. I thought it meant with a joke. I thought, okay.
But
You did eliminate 4 little words, didn't
Yes,
you?
but I never look quite as good as you do, though.
Oh, man. You're trying to borrow money, huh?
That's all.
Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you. At this point, we do not have, just to clarify, even though it's on the agenda, we do not have an executive session. Is there a motion, therefore, to adjourn? We got a move by Councilmember Black, second by Councilmember Boland. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.